Okay, this slide is about barriers and error in decision making. So in order to solve problem effectively, or in order to come up with a good decision making, sometimes we have to face some barriers. So there are barriers. For example, there are two types of barriers. First is mental set, second is functional fixedness. So mental set is based on our similar way of thinking. We do not want to change our way of doing things. We just want to use the old style, the old ways. So here mental set is referring to learn to do things in certain ways. We'll apply the same method. So even though we learn new ways or whatever ways, but we use the same methods even though if it is not appropriate. So, functional fixedness is referring to focusing on main meaning of the object and do not see whether it can be used in other ways more effectively. So, functional fixedness is the opposite of thinking out of the box. So, functional fixedness is thinking just strict to the box, so just within the box. So, we want to come up with the solutions that is something that's out of the box. So if we use functional fixedness, it's like we just strict to whatever we know. It's just within the limited things and limited ways that we know. That means just within the box, not outside of the box. So we actually want to solve the problem, come up with a decision making that's maybe more creative, out of the box, of a common ways. So for example, if we want so first I start with the mental set. So mental set is basically the tendency to approach a problem in the particular way that we used to follow, especially if that way was successful in the past. That's mental set. So we do not want to change our mental set. We do not want to change our way of doing things. We want to use as what we normally use. So especially that way is proven to be successful in the past. That's mental set. So functional fixedness is we only use things based on their own purpose, but we do not think that it can be used for other purpose. For example, how many of us use for example hair dryer just for the hair? So if you having this problem of what we call functional fixedness, we only do things based on what that thing is meant for. For example, hair dryer is to dry the hair, phone is just to call. So if we have this kind of fixedness, what we call it, functional fixedness, we only use the equipment. It just what is a normal purpose. If that's the barrier, these things, for example, hair dryer can be used for many other purposes that we never think of. So if we have that functional fixedness, we only use that things or the equipment for just only for that main purpose. So how many of us use telephones for just calling, messaging, maybe WhatsApping? So how many of us use phone, for example, as maybe to like this photo is to put on our lipsticks, or maybe other things. If we use the equipments or the gadget is for outside of the main purpose, then we say that we have a good use of the object or the equipments, and we do not experience this functional fixedness. So we move into creativity. I hope this kind of end of the end of chapter 6. So creativity is generally defined as the ability to produce work that is novel. So when we talk about creativity, we talk about something novel. So novel means original or unexpected. unexpected, so that's something new. And appropriate, that means useful, so it's useful and adaptive. So creativity consists of two keywords, novel and appropriate. So that means it is something new and it is something useful. If it is new but it's not useful, it's no point. So creativity must be the ability to produce work that is novel, that is new, original, unexpected, but useful, that means appropriate and adaptive. So creativity is associated with higher intelligence. To measure creativity, normally based on distinction between convergent thinking and divergent thinking. So convergent thinking is we use the existing knowledge and rules. Divergent thinking is the outwards from the conventional knowledge into unexplored, unconventional situation. So if we have convergent thinking, it's just like a normal thinking. It's like we use existing knowledge that we have, we just adopt rules, and we just base on the existing knowledge that we learned priorly. Divergent thinking is the opposite of convergent thinking. It's the outwards from the conventional knowledge into unexplored or unconventional situations. So this is something new, something creative. So divergent thinking is associated more with the creativity. So as you can say here, creativity, if we want to differentiate between divergent and convergent thinking, you just produce something that is based on your previous understanding, previous knowledge that you learned. So if let's say I ask you to come up with the design of the bulb, like this, the bulb light, normally people will think this is actually the shape of the bulb light. So if you are convergent thinking, you will come up with this kind of ideas. But if you are divergent thinking, you will come up with the ideas that are different from your normal or existing knowledge that you have. So those who have divergent thinking, they may come up with the different ideas. For example, the shape of the bulb, they may come from different way that they never seen before. So we normally see this kind of light bulbs like this. But if those who are divergent thinking, they may come up with the different ideas that are totally different from the existing knowledge or information that we have. So characteristic of creative people, most people don't describe themselves as creative. Of course, creative people rarely describe themselves as a creative. So normally personal characteristics, so those who are creative normally belong to internal locus of control. So internal locus of control, they believe they have the ability to change to change themselves. So for example, those who have external locus of control, if they are overweight in terms of obesity, or if they are overweight, they will think I cannot do anything because it's a genetic, it's run through the family. But if those who have internal locus of control, they will think, oh, I can do something about this, even though it's still within my control. So internal locus of control is they believe in themselves, they believe in their ability to change themselves, more or less like having self-efficacy, internal locus of control, but this belong to the personal characteristic. And those creative people also have a right brain dominance, so they think laterally and creatively, and instead hierarchically and systematically. So those who are convergent thinking, they just think hierarchically and systematically, but those who are creative people, they think laterally and creatively, so they can handle ambiguous informations and could link different kind of image literally. So if people give them some abstract information, some are not really clear information, they could make this information into meaningful conclusions, into meaningful explanations. So this is the right brains. Those are creative people belong to the right brains. They have passions, they are creative, they love for freedoms. So they belong to that kind of right brains. They consider as in terms of color, shape, texture, music, imaginations, and daydreaming. So these are normally they have certain inclinations toward these kind of things. So there are four aspects developing creativity in employees. There are many aspects mentioned in the textbook. There are four aspects. First, it is important to understand the creative process from secondary to primary process. So normally, we as a common people who are not really creative, we learn something through primary ways. We start with dreaming, musing, meditation, fanciful thinkings. These actually this is the primary ways, that's mean dreaming, musing, meditation, fencing, thinking. Secondary way is logical, systematic, traditional thinking. So understanding creative process from logical to primary. So it start with a logical, systematic, traditional thinking to primary, dreaming, musing, meditations, and so on. So obstacle to creativity must be identified. For example, there are obstacle to creativity. We have to identify normally because we are too reliant on rational thinking. When we are too reliant on rational thinking, if it is unlogical things come up, we tend to censor ourselves. We think it is unacceptable because it is not logic. And we tend also to do self-censoring if it is unlogical. So let's say people come up to you and give some solutions that are you think that is beyond rational. That means it is not logic. You tend to sense, even though if you come up with your own solution, but that solution is illogical or maybe not make sense, you tend to censor yourself. Instead of picking that solution, you tend to say this solution is not practical because it's not logic. You cannot make sense. So you tend to involve in sense and self-sensory. That means you filter yourself the solution or whatever before any other can filter for you. And self-punishment is you punish yourself. When you come up with something creative, something that is considered beyond logical, that means is illogical, something that cannot make sense, you yourself punish yourself. That saying, oh, you are so crazy, come up with this kind of solution, and then you tend to punish yourself and say, is kind of you punish yourself by saying that you are stupid, you cannot make a good judgment, you cannot come up with a good solution, even though easy. So this kind of self punishment can prevent or can make yourself to it can be a barrier to creativity, can prevent yourself from becoming creative. So how to implement the methods? So how to increase your creativity? So you need to implement this. Try to have more imaginary in come up with the solutions, or in solving the problems, or in come up with decision making. Try to be more imaginary. Try to reframe reframe the evaluations instead of your old ideas that you discard or that you remove or you delete because you think it's illogical. Try to reconsider, take back those ideas and not criticize, just evaluate those ideas that you throw away a long time ago because you think it's illogical. Try to reframe those evaluations, and also try to use excursions. Excursions is concentrate more on the interesting object. So focusing more on the interesting object, and then come up with a solution by focusing more on that interesting object. Or you can do is to have a wish list. It's like if I want to become like this, I need to have this list. So wish list is like you compiling all the lists without censoring. So this when you compiling all the lists, for example, to the solutions, to the decision makings, so you can come up with the good ideas, and then after that you can just filter out. But at the beginning, you just come up with all the solutions, all the ideas, even though it's illogical or cannot make sense. Just compile all the ideas. It's like you brainstorming, but this in terms of methods, in terms of creativity, it's calling wish list. So this actually, the next thing that you can do to develop creativity is to encourage creative drive in employees, is to set goal. Of course, it's important to set goal. Try to be creative. How to be creative? Start with yourself to come up with a goods or something that is more creative. Come up with the ideas that maybe make no sense, but try to come up with a wish list, reframe evaluations, become more imaginary, and try to focus on the interesting object. This actually could help you to become more creative in whatever you do. Okay, that's it for today. For